name is Sharon Ibrahim. We are in Kisimiri Secondary School and we are in Form 3 together with my fellow students. Today we are going to represent about human skeleton in general or endoskeleton. Starting with the introduction, skeleton is a framework of bones and tissues found in humans or animals' body. In other definition, we may say that skeleton is a structure in an animal that provides mechanical support to the body and body internal organs. The human skeleton is divided into two main parts, which is the axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. Axial skeleton is comprised with the skull, vertebral column, rib cage and sternum, while the appendicular skeleton is made up with forelimbs and hind limbs. I'm going to explain about skull. The skull is the bony framework of head. The skull is comprised with small bones which fuse together to form a cranium. Okay. The skull is made up of the facial bones, in which the facial bone has two main bones, which are the maxilla and mandible. The maxilla is the upper jaw, while the mandible is the lower jaw. The maxilla does not move because it is fused to the cranium, while the mandible moves because it is articulated to the cranium and connected by muscles. This is the short example. It moves. The mandible moves and the maxilla doesn't move. As you can see, it doesn't move. Okay. The skull articulates with atlas vertebrae, which helps in nodding of head. As you can see, nodding of head. Also, there are bones found in the skull, in which this one is the occipital bone, which is mainly used by surgeons in doing the surgeries. For example, a person has got damage in the brain. This one acts as a lid found in the brain, which opens and closes. This one is the sphenoid bone. This one is the temporal bone. This one is the frontal bone, as you can see. The main function of skull, it protects the brain, and also it protects the inner and middle ear. As you can see, there is a hole for ears and the hole for eyes. Okay, the total function of human skeleton in general, first of all, it provides support, in which it helps us to move, also in doing various activities like this one, because of the rigid framework of bones and cartilage which are connected by muscles. Also, it helps us in locomotion, moving from one place to another. Also, the bones are the site for storage of especially minerals like calcium and phosphorus. Also, in bones, we can manufacture red blood cells in bone marrows. I'd like to welcome my fellow student in order to represent about rib cage and sternum. Thank you.
My name is Bedom Temba. I represent about the rib cage and the sternum. First, I will start with the rib cage. The rib cage comprises of ribs, the rib cage comprises 24 ribs with 12 pairs. The ribs are the flat, curved, thin bones which protect and support the organs which are in the upper body. Categories of ribs, which are the true ribs, the false ribs, and the floating ribs. As you can see, the true ribs are the first pairs of the ribs, which are 7 in number in each pair. As you can see here, first pair, second pair, first pair, second pair, third one, fourth one, fifth, and the third, sixth and the seventh. Known as true ribs because they have direct articulation to the sternum, as you can see here, by the help of intercostal cartilage, as you can see. Another category is false ribs. The false ribs are 3 in pairs. They are known as false ribs because they have no direct articulation at the sternum, but they are just articulate to the last ribs. And at the back, it has the articulation with the vertebral column, as you can see over here. And the last category of the ribs are the floating ribs, as you can see. There are two pairs of floating ribs, in which these are known as floating ribs because they have no articulation at all with the sternum, but at the back articulated with the vertebral column. I'm going to talk about the functions of the ribs. The ribs provide the shape of chest, and also the ribs help in breathing. The ribs help in supportive function and protecting the inner organs, as lungs, heart, and spleen, from injury or shock. The ribs have different adaptations, as you can see here. First of their adaptation, they are flattened, curved, and long, in order to provide the surface area for attachment of intercostal muscles. And also, they are hard, curved, in order to support and protect the organs, as lungs, heart, from mechanical damage. Okay, I'm going to explain again about the sternum. The sternum, with acronym, is known as breastbone, in which the sternum, formed by a few bones fused together. Also, the sternum plays a big role to help articulation of the ribs by articulating the intercostal cartilage to the demifascists. Thanks.
My name is Henry Manuel. I'm going to present about vertebral column. Vertebral column is the main axis of the body. It's made up of 33 small bones known as vertebrae, as you can see. The two adjacent vertebrae, there is a cartilage. Between the two adjacent vertebrae, there is a cartilage known as intervertebral disc, which acts as shock absorber to reduce friction. The main function of vertebral column is to protect the whole body and the spinal cord. Vertebral column is divided into main 5 parts. The first one is cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae, lumbar vertebrae, sacral vertebrae, and caudal vertebrae. Cervical vertebrae. Cervical vertebrae is found in the neck region, as we can see. It's made up of 7 vertebrae. The first one, second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, sixth one, and the last one. The first 2 cervical vertebrae are known as atlas and axis. They are modified to provide the movement. Between the atlas and the skull, there is a joint which helps in the up and downward movement, which is nodding. And between the atlas and the axis, there is a joint which helps in the sideways movement. Vertebrae. Thoracic vertebrae is found in the thoracic cage. This one. In thoracic cage is made up with 12 pairs of bones. Thoracic vertebrae is found in thoracic region. Is made up of 12 pairs of bones. As we can see, thoracic vertebrae, they articulate with ribs at the back. As you can see, they articulate with the ribs at the back. The first 7 thoracic vertebrae are directly attached to the sternum. The function of thoracic vertebrae is to protect the heart, lungs, and major blood vessels from the mechanical damage. Also, it plays a big role in breathing system. We are going to another part, which is lumbar vertebrae. Lumbar vertebrae is made up with 5 vertebrae. As we can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lumbar vertebrae in human being, while in animal like rabbits and rabbits have 7 lumbar vertebrae, while rats have 6 lumbar vertebrae. Lumbar vertebrae permit the bending. Also, it helps in movement of the trunk and rotation of the trunk. In lumbar vertebrae is the place where large muscles in the abdomen are attached. Okay, we are going to another part, which is sacral vertebrae. Sacral vertebrae is found in sacral region. They are fused together to form a sacrum. Sacrum vertebrae fused together to form a sacrum. Sacrum vertebrae provide the surface area for articulation of bones. Through sacrum, the weight of the body or stationary is passed to the pectoral girdle and to the legs. Okay, we are going to the last part, which is caudal vertebrae. Caudal vertebrae is found in the tail region, as we can see. Caudal vertebrae varies on animal and depending the longness of the tail. Since human beings have no external tail, there are only 4 caudal vertebrae. Thanks.
My name is Leonidas Leonard. I'm going to present about the appendicular skeleton. The appendicular skeleton consists of the 2 parts, which are the forelimbs and the hind limbs. I'm going to present about forelimbs. Forelimbs are attached to the exoskeleton, to the anterior part of the body. The forelimbs consist of the following: pectoral girdle, humerus, radius and ulna, carpus, metacarpus, and phalanges. The pectoral girdle, it consists of the 2 halves, whereby each half is made up of the scapula and the coracoid. This girdle is strong enough to support the most weight of quadruped animals when they are stationary. But also the girdle is served as a shock absorber when the animal lands at the end of the long jump. The pectoral girdle is attached to the vertebral column by the muscles and ligaments. This is a flat, triangular shaped bone with a number of the anterior ribs. At the apex of the scapula, there is a concave depression called the glenoid cavity. Of the scapula. The glenoid cavity for the articulation with the head of the humerus in order to allow the movement of the arm. Also, scapula have broad and flattened surface to provide surface area for the muscle attachment. Scapula has a long spine which provides surface area for the muscle attachment. Scapula has the projection called acromion and metacronion, which also these provide surface area for the muscle attachment. Humerus. Humerus, this is a long bone which consists of the head at the upper part, whereby this head it articulates with the glenoid cavity of the scapula to allow the movement of the arm. And at the lower end it consists of the trachea, which articulates with the ulna and radius, and whereby they form a hinge joint. Adaptation of the humerus. Humerus, this it is long to provide large surface area for muscle attachment. Also, humerus, it has head which articulates with the glenoid cavity of scapula to allow the movement of the arm. End scapula is trachea, which articulates with the ulna and radius to allow the movement in only one plane. And radius, these are the bones which form the forearm. Is found at the side where the thumb is located. As this is a flattened and slightly curved bone, and it is simple in design. Ulna, it is longer than the radius. Adaptation of ulna and radius. These bones, ulna and radius, are long. They also provide surface area for the attachment of muscles. Also, ulna and radius, these are the tough bone in order to provide the support. Ulna, all cannon process with segment knots for the articulation of the trachea of the humerus. Carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. The carpals, these are 9 small bones which form the arm. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The carpals articulate with the ulna and radius at the upper end. It also articulates with the metacarpals at the lower end. Metacarpals. These are the bones which form the skeleton of the hand. The metacarpals articulate with the phalanges at the lower end. Phalanges. Phalanges, these are the bones which form the skeleton of the finger. Thank you.
Kisimiri, and I'm going to explain the second part of the appendicular skeleton, in which it's the hind limbs. In which the hind limbs is connected to the axial skeleton in the posterior part of the body. The axial skeleton is the upper part of the body, excluding the forearms. So this part from here is the axial skeleton, while from here to the end is the hind limbs, in which is the appendicular skeleton. So the hind limbs is made up of the pelvic girdle, the femur, tibia and fibula, tarsus, metatarsals, and phalanges. Starting with the pelvic girdle, the pelvic girdle is a wide bone which is also flattened. As you can see, by its width, it's very broad, while the bones here are broad. I mean, they are flattened so as to provide surface area for the attachment of muscles. Also, the pelvic girdle is made up of 3 bones, which are ischium, ilium, and pubis. These 3 bones are completely fused to each other, so from here we cannot really identify the position of each bone because they are completely fused together. Also, this pelvic girdle, it is funnel shaped so as to provide support to the upper part of the body. As you can see, the shape of a funnel, in the upper part it is broad, while in the lower part it is thin. Also, the size of the pelvic girdle is very important for women during childbirth, in which the hormone called relaxin is produced so as to widen the size of this pelvic girdle. Also, the pelvic girdle has a small hole called groove, in which it articulates with the head of the femur bone so as to form a ball and socket joint, in which it allows movement in all directions. We are going to the second part of the hind limbs, which is the femur. The femur bone is the bone found on the upper part of the hind limbs. The femur bone is very long so as to provide surface area for attachment of thigh muscles. The femur bone has a round head. It's round so as to provide surface area with the acetabulum of the pelvic girdles, which allows movement in all planes. As you can see, it will allow movement in all planes. Also, just below the head of femur is where the attachment of muscles starts. So, the attachment of muscles doesn't start here, while it starts at this point here. Also, the femur bone has these two heads here called condyles, which they articulate with the patella of the knee so as to form a knee joint, or it's also called the hinge joint, in which it allows movement in only one direction. Also, the same femur bone is very shaft and strong so as to provide support to the upper part of the body. The other part of the appendicular skeleton is the hind limbs, in which the hind limb is comprised of the tibia, fibula, tarsus, metatarsus, and phalanges. The tibia is the strong bone. It's very tough and strong so as to support the body, the upper part of the body. You can identify the tibia and the fibula by looking at where your big toe is where the position of your big toe is where you can find the tibia, while the position of your small toe in your foot is where you can find the fibula. At the upper starting point of the tibia and fibula is where the articulation of condyles of the femur bone articulates so as to form the hinge joint, or it's also called knee joint. While at the lower end of the tibia and fibula, they articulate with the tarsus to form the ankle. Also, the other part of the hind limbs is the tarsus, metatarsus, and phalanges, in which these tarsus, metatarsus, and phalanges are the small bones which forms the foot, in which here we can find the tarsus, in which tarsus articulates with the metatarsus, and finally metatarsus articulates with the phalanges. And by saying that, we are done with our presentation. On behalf of my friend, we say thank you.
Thank you.